Hi, everyone. Welcome to Heart2Heart Pod, a safe space to have honest and vulnerable conversations to connect and heal our hearts. So, I have a very special guest today. She is a very close friend of mine, and her name is Sarah. Hi, Sarah.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
I'm so
this
excited
is
to have
yeah, this is my first podcast, so yeah, I'm excited. I'm nervous but excited.
It's okay. Like everyone is nervous, and even for myself, I'm always excited, but also a little nervous too. Um,
hmm
and I do want to introduce everyone to you. Sarah is a really good friend of mine, and we met through work, so we were former colleagues. Yeah,
Yes, that is very true. We met through work, and this was a few years ago.
yeah.
Yeah, that's how we met, and we have been friends ever since then.
Yeah, yeah. We both no longer work there anymore. We don't work together anymore, but we
hmm
still hang out outside of work and we keep up with each other's lives. And I have to say, like, Sarah is a really loving, smart, and wise
Oh.
friend because, like sometimes I'm like, oh, Sarah's like a few years younger than me, but I'm like, but she's so wise, and I go to her for advice and stuff too.
Oh, thank you. That's such a compliment. You're making me blush. Oh, that's so nice. I also like confiding in you with things and like going to you for advice. So the feeling is definitely mutual.
Oh, so Sarah, do you want to introduce yourself briefly?
Yes, so my name is Sarah, as you already know, and I work for the federal government. And at my workplace, I am a mental health ambassador, specifically for the Not Myself Today program with the Canadian Mental Health Association. So, yeah, that's my little intro.
Wow. I did not know that. That's
Yeah, now you know.
great. Our topic today is mental health and therapy. And I actually wanted to talk to Sarah and do this episode for months now. But it just happened that I'm like, okay, let's do this. And it's May and it is Mental Health Awareness Month. And we have had conversations about this several times. I do want to say that we are not mental health experts. We are just sharing our personal experiences and how we manage our mental health and work on ourselves through therapy. And I want to ask Sarah, why is mental health important to you?
Yep. Okay. So, first thing is first, like you said, we're not mental health experts. I'm not a mental health expert. So, everything I say today is just based off of my own personal experience. And I actually think your timing with this episode was really good, Tina, even though you weren't really planning it, but it ended up happening during Mental Health Awareness Month, which is great. So, yes, why is mental health important to me? Well, the first reason and the main reason I would say is because I do have social anxiety, which is a mental health issue, and I have friends and family who also have mental health issues. So, because of those reasons, mental health is really important to me. And also, like I just mentioned, I'm a mental health ambassador at work, and this was a role that I had to put my hand up for. And I specifically took on that role because of how passionate I am about mental health. And yeah, that's the main reasons why mental health is so important to me.
I'm really glad that you're sharing this with us. I know it's not easy, and even for myself, I feel like because I also experienced mental health issues growing up, um, this is a really important topic that I want to talk about. And growing up, I had to like learn to live with anxiety and manage it as well. So I actually relate to the social anxiety, and I do know a lot of people who also experience mental health issues and are seeking therapy or working with a therapist. I have introduced this to some people that I know about therapy, and I do openly talk about it. And a lot of people did decide to seek therapy after having conversations with me. I definitely want to normalize having conversations around mental health too, and seeking therapy to remove that stigma. I know that we are all dealing with our own mental health, especially during this time. A lot of us are not feeling our best selves. We're going through a lot internally during the pandemic, and we are going through a lot up and down. So I want everyone to really learn to take care of your mental health and prioritize yourself. So I hope that this episode will be a good reminder for that. And yeah, so Sarah, how have you been prioritizing your mental health lately?
So the main way that I've been prioritizing my mental health as of late is through therapy. And when I say that, I mean what I find to be quality therapy for myself. And, like I've had multiple therapists in the past, and you really have to take the time to find a therapist who's right for you. So like what I did was, I read all of their bios, I did consultations, I also compared prices because, therapy is not cheap. It can be expensive. Now, if you work and you have coverage for therapy, even if it's partial coverage, that's a really big help. But if you don't, there are also free therapy services, which I can go into later. But yeah, the main way I've been helping myself and prioritizing my mental health is through therapy. Um, I've also found that doing the work that's involved with therapy has been a big help, although it's also been challenging at the same time. So, for me specifically, what I'm talking about is stepping outside of my comfort zone and advocating for myself. So, aside from therapy, though, just doing little things to make myself feel better, I noticed has helped. So, for example, I have a very nice, lovely, large bedroom in the basement of my house. Okay.
Yeah.
And I like it because it's very spacious and there's no windows, right? Because it's in the basement. So when I turn off the lights, it's very dark, and that really helps me when I sleep. And also because the temperature is cooler, it also helps me when I sleep because, with the cooler temperature, you usually get better sleep.
Mhm.
But I notice that when I wake up in the morning, there's that lack of natural light because it happens to be in the basement. So instead of going to the bathroom down there in the basement to do my skincare routine, I'll usually just go upstairs and do it because that way I can like feel the natural light, and like experience the brightness, and it just feels better. So little things like that. And also, I love doing my skincare routine. This is like a self care thing I do to make myself feel better, improve my
Mhm.
mental health. But it just feels so nice and I just love it. So little things like that as well is what I've been doing.
No, that's great. I'm glad that you shared the little things that you do in terms of taking care of yourself, but also something a little bit bigger and requires a bit more work, which is therapy. And I know for myself, therapy is a huge investment, but it is worth it. And it does allow you to do a lot of inner work, and it is really challenging. And yeah, even for myself, I have been feeling really heavy in the first quarter of 2021. I have been going through quite a lot in my own personal life, and I wasn't able to really pull myself out of it just by doing the regular self care activities. So I have been seeking therapy more consistently, and because I've been doing therapy on and off for a couple of years, and I myself too have worked with many therapists, and I know for myself, it started with work when I knew about the employee assistance program. So that is the short-term sessions that are covered by the employer. And but basically, the first quarter of this year, I actually used my work insurance, so not the employee assistance program, and I decided to work with a psychotherapist more frequently. So I met with her weekly. And again, therapy is a huge investment, but I do want to say that you are your biggest asset, so you are worth it. So I decided, like, I want to do it more frequently. And other things that I do is I actually started dancing a lot more.
Dancing, eh?
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't really dance, but I think it's also like sometimes I need to get out of the state of feeling down. And I know that one way is like through movement, right? So like exercising, but
Mm-hmm.
also like I just blast on some music and I start dancing and I change my state. So I do that, and then I also do mindset work every day. So I am the type of person who thinks and feels a lot, and I want to be more intentional with each day. So I would do like journaling, or read something. Like I love to read self-help books, and or like even like read like positive, motivating content on social media. I do follow a couple of therapists on social media too, and listening to lifestyle podcasts, that type of thing. And even my previous episode, I did mention that I do gratitude journaling at nighttime at the end of the day. But I also start my morning reading a previous entry. So like I don't start my morning looking at my phone first thing. I think that if I do that, I'll be bombarded with too many messages or too many like thoughts that I don't want to start my day off by doing that.
Well, that all sounds like really good stuff. And I like how you mentioned the dancing thing because it is like it's a mood booster. You're right.
Yeah.
Like it makes you happy and it's a form of exercise too. And exercise has been proven to boost your mood. And the gratitude journal thing is really nice because I saw a video featuring Oprah and Oprah mentioned that you should do a gratitude journal. And if like you're going to listen to anyone, it's going to be Oprah, right? Like who else are
Yeah,
you going to listen
that's
to?
true.
So
And I know you
like
do it too. Like you would share like your gratitude for the day too.
yeah, it's really nice. Actually, I think I know what you're talking about because on my Instagram lately, I've been posting every day like a thing that
Yeah.
I'm grateful for. Yes. So the reason why I'm doing that is because it's Ramadan right now and I'm fasting.
Oh,
So it lasts
okay.
for about 30 days, right? So during this month, you're supposed to, of course, fast. You can basically have an opportunity to get closer to God and be more spiritual and thankful and grateful. So that's why every day during Ramadan, I plan to post one thing that I'm grateful for, whether it's something big or small.
Mm-hmm.
But having that collection of things to look back on, like you said, you look at something you were grateful for every morning that you wrote previously.
Mm-hmm.
That's something I think that's really beneficial because it's a nice reminder, right? Even if you're having a bad day or a bad morning, or maybe last night wasn't that great, you can
Mm-hmm.
look at that and say, okay, it's not all doom and gloom. There's always a silver lining in there. And it's nice to have that reminder for sure.
Yeah, yeah. You know, like that quote where like every day might not be a good day, but there's always something good in each
Good
day.
about every day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, I actually really enjoy doing that, and that's the most consistent habit I have to date. If you do have mental health problems, what are the challenges it poses to your life? And
Uh,
this is a great question by Sarah.
yes, yes. I was like, oh, we need to discuss this because we got to be real, right? And
Yeah.
like, it's hard. Like having a mental health issue is difficult. It's not a walk in the park. Not that I think people believe it is, but it's good to just talk about it? So for me, I can only speak for myself. I do have social anxiety, but I have friends who have social anxiety and their struggles are different from mine. So that's one thing that I just want to put out there. You can have the same mental illness as someone, you can be categorized in the same box, but your experiences are going to be different. So just to keep that in mind. So for me, with my social anxiety, I find it can be harder for me to approach people, like people that are new, people that I don't know very well, and it takes me a longer time. And the reason why is because of my social anxiety, I have that anxiety, that fear of judgment that's usually present. I am scared that people are going to judge me negatively, even if there's no basis for that, right? Because if you think about it, if you're going up to someone new, right, and introducing yourself, they don't know anything about you. So it's not like they have a misconception of you or they think something badly of you, but for some people who have social anxiety, this is just a fear of theirs. Their body goes into like a fight or flight mode. And even though there's no danger present, it feels like there's danger there in introducing yourself, in talking to someone new, in getting to know someone, putting yourself out there and making yourself vulnerable to that. And I think people who don't have social anxiety might not understand this, but it's a legitimate fear for a lot of people who do have social anxiety. So that's one thing. The other thing that a lot of people with social anxiety experience is they overthink things, like to an extreme. They catastrophize, and they make assumptions. So, for example, you might think, oh, I said good morning to this person, and they said good morning back, but they looked like they were upset or down. And then from that thought, it could go to, oh my gosh, are they upset with me? What did I do? What did I do in the past few days? Did I say something to that person? Does this person not like me? Oh my gosh, does this person hate me? What can I do to fix this? So you see how you go from one small action and kind of catastrophize and think of the worst possible scenarios. So that's something that happens to a lot of people who experience social anxiety. And they make assumptions about, what is someone else thinking because of this fear that they have, the anxiety that they experience within themselves. Another thing that I've noticed for myself is that I'm better now. I've made progress, but especially in the past, I had a lot of difficulty saying no to people. Whether it's something about work or personal life or like a favor that a friend asks you to do for them. It has been difficult for me in the past to say no because I don't want to offend that person by saying no to them, to their request. But what I've learned is that, you know, I don't think anymore that it's offensive to say no to someone. Back then, before I got anxiety treatment, that's the fear that I had, is that I would offend them by saying no. But I realized that, it's important to just be upfront with what you can and can't do. There's no reason to be offended by that. And no one would be offended by that. If they are offended, then, you know, that's kind of their problem, because I think it's important to be upfront, like I said, with what you're capable of doing and what you feel you can do at the moment and what you can't. So those are the typical symptoms and challenges that I've noticed with my social anxiety, but I found that therapy has really, really helped me a lot with those. So specifically CBT, that's cognitive behavior therapy, that was the first form of anxiety treatment that I tried, which it basically teaches you how to alter your way of thinking, right? So this could be helpful in a case where you do overthink or you catastrophize and make assumptions and jump to the worst conclusion. And that really did help, especially as an introduction to anxiety treatment. So those are the challenges that I have faced with that.
Wow, you explained everything so well. Thank you for sharing like all of that and your examples too. I also have done CBT treatment, and I can relate to a lot of what you've said as well. I also want to say that I am so happy to witness your growth. Like you have grown so much over the years, and I'm proud of you.
Thank you so much. That means so much to me. And also, when we met, I didn't even know I had social anxiety.
Oh,
When we met, I
yeah.
thought I was just shy. I wasn't even aware that I had a mental health issue. I thought it all came down to my personality and that I was shy. And it's weird because I could sense in my body that I was feeling fear,
Mm,
but it didn't register in my mind as fear. It registered in my mind as I'm just shy, you know?
okay.
So it's great to hear that you see an improvement in me and that you're
Yeah.
proud of how far I've come, because I think the hardest thing to do, or the first step I should say, is identifying that you have a mental health issue, because if you can't identify it, then you can't be expected to treat it because
Hmm.
you don't know what it is, right?
Right, exactly.
So yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I definitely experienced many challenges growing up. So I did have a lot of anxiety growing up, and I would say even low self-esteem. And it was a lot much worse when I was younger. I definitely did have social anxiety as a little girl, and I knew that I needed help, but I didn't know where to seek it. Like I didn't even know like I knew about therapy maybe from like shows or movies, and but for me I was thinking, oh, like that must be so expensive, and like I don't know the resources to seek help too. And I know like I think you told me before that at least at work, I am perceived to be pretty social with the people at work.
Yes, yes.
So I don't know,
From
like,
my perspective, at
yeah,
least.
from your perspective, and I guess like I do really did enjoy like talking to everyone at work, and I think I did approach you and said hi to you
Hmm.
first too, and even someone said I was like the happiest person at work, but I'm like,
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's because I do enjoy working with the people that I worked with, so that's why I'm so happy. And also, I wasn't really enjoying the work I was doing too, so
Hmm.
the people mattered so much to me, and that was what I look forward to. Hmm.
I see. So what you're saying is because, you were looking for something more in terms of the work you were doing, you kind of looked towards the people that were around you instead because you found that they were enjoyable to
Yeah,
interact with
yeah,
and talk
that,
to.
and
Yeah.
also like for myself, what I find is that say sometimes I walk into a room and I observe the room and the people in it and the energy too, right? I feed onto other people's energy pretty easily, and
Hmm.
maybe I might notice someone who is like sitting by themselves. Like they could be perfectly like comfortable and fine and don't want to talk to anyone, but I think for
Hmm.
me, I feel like I kind of relate to them in some way. Like maybe I feel like we have similar energies or similar personality or something like that. And I feel like also I think I have good judgment with people. At least like I know you're a good person. So sometimes I feel like, okay, like why don't I just go up and say hi? This wasn't always like this though, of course. Like it's just like
Hmm.
over the years I've gotten a lot better in terms of meeting new people and introducing myself. But I think it's also like when I saw you, I felt like, oh, like I feel like we can be friends. I feel like I can kind of see it where I can see a connection, and that's why I also introduced myself to like a couple of other people at work too. Maybe we have similar personalities, and if I don't say hi or if neither of us actually make the move to introduce ourselves, then there isn't that connection. And I feel like that's also why I've approached some people at work. But anyways, I do want to say that when I was younger, it was definitely a lot worse. And um, yeah, when I was younger, some something as simple as raising my hand and speaking up in class was so difficult. And I
Hmm.
would experience symptoms like I knew that I was so scared too. Like symptoms like I would be so nervous speaking up in class. My body would actually be shaking. I would
Yeah.
have sweaty palms. Maybe my voice might even shake, and my mouth was dry. I definitely feel like my heart beating really fast. Like I actually experienced all of those, and I was like, that was how bad it was.
Hmm.
And I remember doing really simple tasks was so challenging, like ordering food at a restaurant or talking to a stranger. Little things like that made it really hard for me to live my life. But then, like, so I actually kind of am aware of how that I had some type of like mental health illness when I was
Hmm.
younger, but not knowing how to face it or not really knowing what exactly it might be. Um, but I'm glad that like I have gotten a lot better over the years in terms of just being exposed to different experiences and people in my life. And yeah, even like therapy, I've only really started a couple of years ago. But I also realized how much like working on my mindset and how it all starts with the mind. So therapy definitely has helped a lot in my mindset and CBT. Hmm.
Yeah. Well, I'm really glad to hear that you've basically made leaps and bounds in terms of your improvement, especially considering the physical symptoms that you used to experience when you were a child. Because anxiety, you do have a very physical response to it.
Mhm.
It can be very visible, right? A lot of the times, someone's mental health issue is not visible. For example, if someone may be very happy and outgoing and talkative and personable, let's say in the workplace, but that person might have depression, and you might not be able to see that, but the thing is, you don't know what they're experiencing inside, right? So but yeah, anxiety is a very physical thing. You do get a very physical response to it. So, and honestly, I'm not surprised that you weren't aware that you had anxiety when you were young, because I don't know about you, but I have found that mental health was not really a thing that people talked about back in
Mhm.
the 90s, 2000s, even like up to like mid 2010s. It wasn't that discussed, and there wasn't a lot of education about it. And I feel like that's something that should be taught in schools if it's not taught currently for the newer generation,
Yeah,
because there's a lot of children who have mental health issues and they don't know because they have never been taught about it. And like I said, if you don't know what you have, how are you supposed to treat it? Because you don't know what to treat, right? And you may just think, oh, I'm just shy. It's just a personality thing, right? You might not realize it's a mental health thing. So, yeah, the fact that you and I have come so far without having early education about mental health is really something that's amazing, I think. And that's why I think, to all those of you who are adults now and have children in your life, whether they're your own kids or nephews or nieces or little cousins or just any kind of kids in your life, I think it's important to be aware of that, because I would hope, like for me, if I have children in my life, like I do have a nephew, but I would want to educate them about these things, or at least just be aware of it myself so I can spot any signs that show up. So, if they do need help, they can get help because they'll actually know what it is that they're dealing with.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like everything that you said about not knowing and not even like having these conversations growing up, or not even knowing anyone who seeks therapy, and how much it really does help, and how this is why we're doing this today. We want to let people be aware of this, and also um, to educate, but just to open up these conversations. So, with mental health problems, are there any benefits that it adds to your life?
Okay, so this is a surprising answer for a lot of people, I feel, because, I have said that I have social anxiety and I've gone over all the challenges that it adds to my life. But I find that there are benefits for me personally, okay? And I think it really depends on the individual that you ask. Some people who experience social anxiety might say there's no benefits to it. Like, I hate it. And to be honest, I don't love that I have social anxiety, but I do also acknowledge the benefits. And for me, these are the benefits that I see in myself. So, this is something I discussed with my therapist actually, but I discovered that because of my social anxiety, I can see and notice things that others might not be able to. And what I mean by that is that I'm more observant of others around me, and I'm usually more mindful of those around me. So, because of that I think that has caused me to be more empathetic and considerate of other people, and that's made me a better friend and a better person, I think. So if there's any benefit to my social anxiety, I would say that that's it. I think it's allowed me to be a kinder person because I'm more understanding, or I would like to think I'm more understanding of other people. So for example, instead of just saying the first thing that comes to mind out of curiosity, I will consider, okay, how is that person behaving right now? Do they seem comfortable? Is it really okay for me to push this question onto them right now in front of other people? I don't think so. I'm just going to hold off for their benefit, because I think sometimes people will say things without having bad intentions, but they'll say it without considering what the other person might be going through. And that's where some unintentional damage can be done. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I would like to think that it makes me a better person too. Definitely like more empathetic and compassionate with others. And it also makes me think I always like remind myself to be kind to other people because everyone is fighting their own battles and you can only see what they choose to show. So always be kind. They may seem like the happiest person, but they could be going through a lot internally. And just to be more self-aware and to practice the self-compassion on myself too. Through therapy, I've learned to like self-soothe and regulate my thoughts and emotions a lot better. And it has helped me continue to work on myself and become a better and stronger version of me. So I definitely think that even though it is really challenging having this mental health illness, it has added benefit to my life in that way.
Yeah, and I think that's totally accurate and valid. Like, I think people see, sometimes, I think some people see those who have a mental health issue as, okay, there's this person who is a whole, but because of this mental health issue, they have a part of them that's damaged, that's not usable. So they are less than whole now, right? Because there's a fraction of them that's not good, like, broken, can't use it, right? But I think what people fail to recognize is that with every disadvantage that you have, or with every circumstance that causes a disadvantage to you, there's usually something that is brought out within you that makes up for that. And doesn't make you any less just because you have this one part of you that needs work. It brings out a part of you that is a strength that other people might not possess,
Mhm.
like the ability to be more compassionate and considerate of others. So yeah, that's just something to be aware of.
Right, yeah.
Mhm.
And when it comes to all things mental health related, what are some do's and don'ts for people?
Oh my gosh, I have so many. Okay, so just
Yes.
bear with
Yeah,
me
no,
because I have a lot to say
good,
about
good.
this. Okay, so the first thing, and we just touched on this, is please, everybody, find it within yourself. I know you can all do it to be considerate and empathetic with other people, okay? So I touched on this a little bit, just briefly, but sometimes people just do things or say things without bad intentions. They don't have any ulterior motives or bad intent, but they also don't think sometimes before they do or say those things. Okay. So, depending on what you say and who you say to, that could negatively affect them. And that's not something that we want, I would think, for anybody. So, I had an example of this, and what happened was, this was a few years ago. This was before I was aware that I had social anxiety. This was before I was receiving treatment. I was in a group of people, okay? And we were all sitting down and well, they were talking, but I was very anxious and I felt out of my comfort zone because I was with a bunch of people that I knew of, but I didn't really know that well. And they were discussing things, and I was just, being quiet, being observant, just sitting back kind of thing, right? And this one person in the group, oh my gosh, I still remember this, and it still makes me a little nervous to think about it. They just it was so there was like a little bit of a lull in the conversation, and they just looked at me, right? And they were like, "Hey, you're not saying anything. How come you're so quiet?" And that, it might not sound like a big deal to a lot of people because it's just a question. And I'm sure, I'm like 99% sure that person didn't have any bad intent. Wasn't thinking, oh, I'm going to make Sarah feel uncomfortable today. I don't think that's what they were thinking. But because they asked me that, I like felt very uncomfortable. And that's one of the worst things you can do to someone who has social anxiety, is to put them on the spot when they are clearly, you can see that they are not jumping into the conversation, right? That they prefer to be kind of on the sidelines. So I was kind of flustered and I didn't know what to say because I didn't expect that. I didn't think that they were going to put me on the spot like that in front of a bunch of people. So I took a little bit, but then I was just like, I'm like a shy person, and so it takes me a bit of time to like get to know someone before I start like contributing like in social discussions and stuff like that. And that was fine. They were nice about it, but the thing is that bothered me the whole day afterwards, right? Even though it was done with, and people might think it's such a minor thing. But at that point in time, for me, I was like, oh, why did this have to happen? If I could have seen this happening, I just wouldn't have sat down with them. I would have just stayed at my desk, right? Because it bothered me. But now having gone through treatment and therapy and all of those things, if someone were to ask me that, I would just straight up tell them, hey, well, I have social anxiety, so it can be difficult for me to throw myself into a discussion at first. And now I have power in saying that. I think before I would have been embarrassed to admit to people that I have social anxiety because remember what I said, that there are people who feel like once you have a mental health issue, there is something wrong with you and you're not a whole person anymore because you have this fracture within you, right? And I think I would have felt that telling people I have social anxiety would have made me feel vulnerable, and maybe people would think, oh, what's wrong with her? Like, obviously, she has some sort of issues, right? But now my perspective has totally changed, and I feel a lot of power in that because now it's like when I tell someone I have social anxiety, what are they going to say? You're going to say something to me? I don't think so, right? And if you do say something rude or offensive, that just shows what a terrible person you are.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. That's how I would have dealt with it now. Just explain, I have social anxiety. But yeah, not everyone has gone through treatment, and some people have gone through treatment, but they're not at the point that they want to be at yet. So just to be considerate um, of others and be mindful of what you say before you say it, or what you do before you do it, because you never know what someone is experiencing and how it could affect them, right? For someone who had more severe social anxiety than I did at that time, it could have affected them way worse. Maybe they would have thought about it for like a whole week. Like, who knows? Maybe their
Mm-hmm.
whole weekend would have been ruined. Like, you never know, right? So, just to be mindful of that. So, that's the first thing. Oh, about this is something interesting that I noticed. This may sound counterintuitive, but I've found personally in my experience that some people who have social anxiety actually might have better social skills than some people who don't have social anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And I say this because if you refer to the example I just talked about, sometimes people with social anxiety are more aware of their surroundings instead of just blurting out whatever comes to mind. And that is a social skill, right? Being able to read a situation and being able to avoid making someone else uncomfortable. So, yeah, just
Yeah.
an interesting tidbit that I noticed over the
Interesting.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing, I can't believe I have to say this, but I do have to say this. And it's so sad that I have to say this, but it's reality. Don't bully people, okay? Everybody, please don't bully people. Adults bully people too. It's not just children who bully people. Adults can also be bullies. And so the previous point that I made about the whole, that person asking me, why are you so quiet? That is a circumstance in which the person said something not with bad intentions, just out of ignorance. They weren't aware, right, that it would make me uncomfortable. They didn't think about it. Not saying that it was a good thing that they did, but they didn't do it out of bad intent. But there are people who will do things knowing that it hurts someone and continue to do it anyways, and that's bullying, okay? So anything like taking a joke too far when you know the other person is not okay with it, or even if they don't tell you they're not okay with it, you should be able to understand when you're taking a joke too far. Or if you start joking, quote unquote, about someone without being close to them or knowing them that well, I feel like, and this is just my personal opinion, I don't think that's a joke. I think that's just an excuse to make fun of someone at their own expense. Because if you have a close relationship with someone and you joke about someone all the time, you like, whatever, have that kind of relationship, that's fine because you know that that person won't be offended and won't be hurt by what you're saying. But if you don't know someone, just, it's better to play it safe than sorry. Don't make a joke at someone else's expense if you don't know how they're going to take it. Okay. And I've seen this happen to people that I know, and it's really sad to know that it has happened to them and to see the toll it takes on their mental health. And it just makes me so angry. Like, if I'm being honest, I get so upset. I have zero tolerance for people who do that, like absolutely none. Um, and I just want to say to anyone who's experienced something like that before, um, okay, I'll just give an example. Let's say that you're in a school, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you like the school, you have friends there, you have teachers that you like you're on a team or whatever, I don't know, you like the school, but there is someone who is bullying you, and it just ruins everything for you. It just ruins your experience. Even though there are so many good things about it, your whole experience is tainted because of how severely that person's bullying affects you, right? My advice would be to try to go to someone, an authority figure, for help, right? Some people are able to do that. They have that skill to go to a teacher or a principal in this specific example I'm giving, which is a school setting, right? To get help. But not everyone has that ability yet, right? And you may be thinking, well, if it's a school situation, then the parents would have that ability to go to the teacher or principal. But not everything is in a school situation. Some things happen at work, some
Mm-hmm.
things happen outside of work, outside of school. And, some people may feel that they don't have the ability to go to an authority figure because they don't want to be a burden. They feel that, they're scared that they're going to be a burden, that they're going to ruin things for everyone, that people are going to talk about them being a snitch, whatever, right? And because of that, they may say, okay, you know what? I have to pull myself out of this situation. I have to change schools, or I have to change whatever environment I'm in. I have to leave. And it is sad when that happens, but I want to tell people that just because you might not have the strength right now to go to someone for help, or to take things all the way up, that doesn't mean that you have no strength. Because remember that prioritizing your own well-being and taking yourself out of that situation is strength in itself, and it's strength that other people might not have. So I don't want people who have experienced that before to feel that, oh, I'm a coward, or I can't speak up for myself, I can't do anything right, I can't defend myself. That's not true. You might not have gained the skill to reach out for help yet, but you have the skill to help yourself, and that's proven when you are able to take yourself out of that situation. Doesn't mean that you're running away. It means that you are finding the strength within yourself to protect yourself, and that's what's the most important: your own protection, your own well-being. Okay, so I just want to make that point to anyone who's experienced bullying or anything that negatively affects their mental health. Don't see yourself as a coward, because you're not a coward and you're not weak. You just haven't gained that skill yet to maybe reach out to someone else for help, but you do have strength, enough strength to protect yourself. Okay? So
Yeah.
yes, that was a little heavy, but it's
No,
very
no,
true.
I'm really glad that you brought up about bullying and the advice that you gave, and it was just all really good information. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's a second thing. Now, the third thing that I'd like to say to people is, please please educate yourself about mental health. Okay, so I'm an ambassador at work for mental health, and so I send monthly emails out to my team about various topics surrounding mental health, like language, do's and don'ts. So in that sense, I am providing them with a bit of an education, like a small form of education, just around certain topics of mental health through my emails, if they choose to read it, right? Some people might not read it, some people may delete it. That's their choice. But I do urge you to please educate yourself about mental health, because there are so many people who have mental health issues. You probably know someone who has a mental health issue, and you might not even know that they have a mental health issue. Okay, so it's really important to educate yourself, because we have to remember that it's no one else's responsibility to educate us. We have the responsibility to educate ourselves. Okay, and if you choose not to educate yourself, that's your choice. And no one can force you to educate yourself, but I do urge you to educate yourself, because I believe it will make you a better person and have you be more understanding of other types of people. And you might just be able to help someone that you love and care about. right? So, and also, this is another thing with educating yourself about mental health. It does help to educate yourself because it does away with harmful attitudes about mental health. So, saying things like, people choose to be depressed because they want attention and that they can fix it if they want to. It's all about willpower, but they just want attention. And so they say that they're depressed. That's a very inconsiderate and uneducated view. And all that shows is ignorance and that you're not a kind person. And it's those kinds of attitudes that cause mental health stigma. And it doesn't help the person with their mental health issue, it just hurts them and makes it worse. So I think educating yourself is really important. Now, the other thing that I would say is if you experience a mental health issue or if you don't, it's I would encourage you to distance yourself from any toxic behavior that makes you feel bad, that takes a toll on your mental health. I did have a situation once where um, I decided to distance myself from someone because they were making me feel bad. And every time I thought about them, I just felt bad and it was taking a toll on my mental health. And so for that reason, I decided to distance myself from them. And they were angry at me because of that, because of my choice to distance myself. And, first, I just want to say that if someone is angry or upset with you for taking care of your own mental health, don't even let that bother you because the primary thing to be concerned about is your own well-being, okay? So just one thing I want to note. So yes, they were upset because of that and they started, saying very hurtful things to me. And I understood in my mind that they probably aren't even thinking about what they're saying right now. They're probably just so upset that they are just having word vomit, right? And just saying whatever comes to mind.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that's not an excuse to treat someone badly, right? So, if
Exactly.
anything, yeah, if anything, that experience taught me that I made the right decision, right? By
Mm-hmm.
distancing myself from that person because of how negative they were being and how harmful they were being. And so sometimes it's hard to distance yourself from toxic behavior. But I think sometimes it's necessary, right? Especially if it's to your benefit. Um, so there's that. And we're on number 5 now. I've been counting. The fifth thing
Yeah.
that I would say, yeah, is um, okay. Here's a tricky thing. Okay, I don't really have a concrete answer to this because I don't really know how to navigate this 100%, but I can tell you what I think. Um, so sometimes a person will be really overwhelmed by their mental health, right? And in that feeling of, you know, being overwhelmed, they will reach out to someone like a friend or someone or a family member. And the thing is, sometimes depending on the person that they are reaching out to, that person might feel, okay, this is too overwhelming for me. I don't know how to handle this. I don't know how to respond to this person. But I think it's very important. Okay, it takes two to tango, right? I think it's important for the person who's being reached out to for help to be careful of how they respond to this person. Because let's say someone is constantly reaching out to you for help with their mental health and you are feeling overwhelmed, and we're all human, and you've been feeling irritated with them lately because
Mm-hmm.
of how often they've been reaching out to you or because of the time of day or night that they've been reaching out to you. You've been feeling irritated. It's important to take a step back before you respond to them, because if you respond to them in a hurtful manner or in a passive aggressive manner, you you could really negatively affect someone, right? And that's the thing, that it's important to be careful of how you respond to someone. So I would say, if someone is reaching out to you for mental health advice or for support, and for whatever reason you feel you're unable to give them that support, instead of brushing them off or being whether it's intentional or unintentional, being mean to them, I would say, I'm so sorry you're going through this, and I want to help you. I'm just not sure how. Have you considered this? Have you considered looking into therapy? Have you considered this? Right? You
Mhm.
could say something like that instead of saying, you've been hitting me up all the time and it's like getting on my nerves. Okay, I really wouldn't recommend saying something like
Yeah.
that. Okay, because yes, I understand we're all human, and you also have to take care of your own mental health. If you find something is draining for you, it's important to recognize that and set boundaries, but you can do so in a kind way. Okay, so that's a message to the person who is responding to cry for support. Now, the person who is seeking support, sometimes, we can feel like we're in a really dark place and we just need help. So we try to latch on to whoever we can. Um, if you find you are really struggling, I would really recommend seeking therapy, right? And still relying on your support systems, having them there, having them in place, but trying to get to the goal of being your own therapist. And how do you do this? Well, first, you would need to start treatment or therapy or whatever form of treatment that works for you. And the hope and the goal is that one day you'll be able to support yourself, maybe not entirely, but more than you were able to in the past, so that you can rely on yourself more. Okay.
Mhm.
So that's just my personal advice. I mean, I don't know, but I don't really have a solid answer of how to deal with that kind of situation. Tina, I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that? Because honestly, that's the best that I could think of. But it's a tricky situation to be in on both
Mhm.
sides, I feel like.
Yeah, no, I really love that you shared what the support person, like how they can respond. I feel like tell them like, oh, like I'm sorry that you're going through this. I need to take a step back and we can talk about this later. I feel like
Yeah.
maybe that person needs time to process what's the person just told them, like all this information. They might feel a bit overwhelmed and like maybe step back and be like, oh, I'm gonna think about this, or I need some time. I need a bit of space to think about this, to process all of this. But we can talk about it later. Like maybe it's just at that time you're not able to mentally respond to that or be present for them or just be there for them.
Yeah.
I think that's something that they could say. Hmm.
For sure. And this is one thing, actually, I follow some therapists on Instagram too.
Yeah,
And one thing I saw, yeah, they're very useful sometimes and very
yeah.
helpful.
I actually learned a
Um,
lot, like how to communicate and what to kind of say too. But yeah, yeah.
yeah, honestly, and if you're going to be on social media, why not learn something beneficial, right?
Hmm.
But what's it called? There's this one therapist who mentioned something interesting. They said that when you use but in a sentence, it takes away the whole first half of what you said. So, for example, I love you, but I can't do this right now.
Hmm.
It
Yeah.
makes you forget about the I love you part, and all you focus on is I can't do this right now,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
As opposed to saying something like, I love you, and I don't have time for this right now. Do you have time to talk later?
Mm.
Right? So
Yeah.
using and in place of but sometimes can help when you are on the receiving end of that message.
Yeah.
That's what I learned. And I feel like, personally, I feel like it could be helpful. So that's just some random
Oh,
knowledge out
it's
there
good
for
because
everyone.
it really is true. Like the choice of words really does make a
Hmm.
difference. So to be mindful of that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And yes, I do have one more thing I want to say about this question. The last thing I will say about this is there's also the reverse situation that can happen. So instead of someone that's constantly seeking support for their mental health, you could have someone who you find is just distancing themselves. And this can be scary for the person who wants to give support, for the person who is worried about, the individual who's experiencing this mental health issue, right? So, like, I've had people in my life who um, they had been struggling with their mental health, and I noticed that they were being distant, and it worried me. And I also felt insecure because, maybe it was because of my anxiety, but I felt, oh, is this person, okay, did I do something? Or are they upset with me? Kind of like the overthinking thing I mentioned way in the beginning.
Yeah.
So I reached out to them and I was like, hey, I haven't seen you in so long. I haven't talked to you. I'd really love to hang out. And I was so hopeful, right? Because I wanted to see this person, and I missed them, but they didn't respond. And I was like, oh, now I just feel bad, right? I feel hurt. But what I didn't realize at that time is that that person is going through something and it's very difficult. Okay. And now know that that person needs space in order to heal and deal with the things that they are dealing with. So I would just like to advise others that I know it's easy to um, focus on ourselves and our own feelings. And, if we feel hurt, if we feel sad, if we feel like neglected, but it's always beneficial to consider the other side. Did you ever stop to think, why is that person's behavior changing so suddenly? Are they going through something? Maybe what they need right now is not more time with me or other people. Maybe what they need right now is space. Okay. And if someone says that they need space, the healthiest thing you can do for them is to respect their boundaries and give them that space. That being said, I do understand it's a concern to make sure that they're doing okay. So you can always check up with them once in a while just to make sure that everything's good. Or, if they're not in the space to be able to respond to you, just knowing that there is someone in their life who is able to check up on them, that's all you really need. And I think you just have to let things be and give that person their space, right? So
Mhm.
mental health is a really individual and personalized thing, and everyone has their own needs. And I think it's important to be able to respect that person's needs and give them, what they need to be able to heal. So,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Wow. No, that
Yeah.
was really good. That was a lot of information, but yeah, there was so much that I felt it was so powerful. Your advice and what you said. Um, like even with what you just said about giving people space, like I think a lot of us sometimes we might message someone and they don't respond, and then you might overthink and be like, oh, was it me? Like, are they mad at me? Like, why are they not responding? Do they not care?
Mm-hmm.
That type of thing. But again, with what you said, sometimes like, you don't know what's going on in their lives, and you don't have to personalize it. So it may not even be about you, right? It could be like they're going through something, they don't have time to respond. I don't think it's because of you. And so like
Yeah.
sometimes like it has happened to me too. Like before, I might think that way, but I might have to like switch that mindset and be like, okay, they might be like really busy right now. They're going through stuff themselves. So I'll check in later, and once in a while I do try to check in with friends too, because you don't know how they're doing, and you definitely cannot tell how they're doing just through a screen and
Mm-hmm.
just from messaging, right? Um,
Yep.
and then when you mentioned about your experience where someone might ask you like, "Oh, why are you so quiet?" I completely relate to that. I've experienced it many times in my life. I don't like it. It happens a lot. You are put on the spotlight, and sometimes you just don't really want to say anything. You just want to listen. You want to sit back and listen, or you don't feel that comfortable sharing. And I think that's fine. Like I think, or it even takes maybe for you, it's like it takes time for you to process some things. And I am someone who just think before I say something too. And I think that people should be mindful of maybe instead of asking, oh, why are you so quiet, you can say, like, what are your thoughts on this, Tina?
Exactly.
Like
That's a
a
much better
different
approach.
way instead of just pointing out, like, why are you being this way? Being present, like,
Yeah.
I'm there, but you include me in your conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's like another way of saying things and being more mindful of the other person. And then you just covered a lot of really good things. I also think like I'm sorry that you had to experience toxic energy where you felt like could use some support, or that you didn't feel like that person was really there for you, instead started to take offense to what you were dealing with. I think
Mm-hmm.
that nobody should be attacking anybody for what they're experiencing or their personality or who they are. but rather really try to like understand and be there for that person. But anyways, back to this
Yeah.
question and mental health
Yes.
related. You had a lot of great points, so I'm just going to add on to a little bit of what you said. To always be kind to people, whether or not you know they are experiencing any sort of mental health condition. Even if you do know that they are experiencing it, to not treat them any different.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to
That's
be like
important. Yeah.
singled out or anything. It's just maybe just be more mindful of how you communicate with that person. If you
Exactly.
do know someone who is experiencing any mental health condition, the best you can do is really be there for them and to let them know that you're here for them. I think a lot of times we don't know what to do
Mm-hmm.
because we're not equipped with that type of information. Ask them how you can support them,
Yeah, that's
and
a good idea. A very
if
good idea.
and if they want to talk about it, sometimes they don't want to talk about it, and that's okay. They may
Mm-hmm.
come to you and when they feel comfortable. And if they do, just listen and listen to understand. I think that, as long as you're there listening and validating how they feel and their experience, that's already enough sometimes. You don't have to try to solve their problems or give advice. Sometimes we
Mm-hmm.
don't need that. We just want someone to be there and listen.
Yeah.
Um, And in terms of setting boundaries, I think that's really important. For sure, surround yourself with people who love you and uplift you, and limit the interactions with those who are maybe more negative or have toxic energy, as what you have mentioned. And
Mm-hmm.
I know sometimes it can be hard. Maybe that person is a family member or a friend in your close group of friends circle. But sometimes, yeah, I guess what you can do is limit your interaction with them or remove yourself from that environment. um, yeah. So like
Mm-hmm.
even say
Yeah.
like if you were in a toxic work environment, it is a lot harder to just like quit your job or something like that. But it is sometimes just like removing yourself from that space when you can. And I know for myself, like I don't tolerate being treated with any type of disrespect.
Mm-hmm.
So like for sure, like make sure you set those boundaries. And also, like, don't judge people for what they are feeling and thinking, and especially don't judge yourself. I realize this that as I'm going through like therapy or different situations, that I'm actually might be judging myself. Something that I would tell myself now is, just allow yourself to feel what you feel and don't judge yourself. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's really important. About what you said about,
Hmm.
if you have someone toxic that you're close to, like let's say they're a part of your family or they're a very
Yeah.
close friend that you rely on or something like that. Um, if you find that you're unable to distance yourself from them because maybe you live with them, maybe you see them all the time, or maybe you like work with them, I don't know what it could be. But if you do have access to therapy, into a therapist, I would highly suggest going to your therapist and say, hey, I'm always around this person. I'm really having trouble dealing with them, but I'm not in a space to remove myself right now or to be away from them. How can I cope? Right?
Hmm.
Because you need to be able to know how to cope if you're going to be around that person, and you don't want your mental health to suffer. So that's really important. Yeah, I hear that you should always talk to yourself the way that you would talk to your best friend, or treat
Yeah.
yourself the way that you would treat your best friend.
That,
Like if I came to you and said, Tina, oh my God, I did something so embarrassing. I'm mortified. I can never show my face again. You wouldn't be like, oh yeah, Sarah, I just wouldn't show my face again if I were you. You wouldn't say that to me,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, that is something
You would
I'm still
talk me through it.
practicing. Yeah, because I would
Yeah.
say myself, oh, like I'm so nice to my friends. I need to be nice to myself too. And
Yeah.
so
It's
exactly.
always nice to practice that. And I find what helps for me personally is to have an actual dialogue. If you want to do it in your room, so, it's private and doesn't look like you're just talking to yourself. And
It's
by the way,
okay.
self talk is very normal,
I
by the
talk to
way. Self
myself
talk
all
is
the
very
time.
normal. out about. Yeah,
Yeah.
self-talk is very normal. But yeah, it could be helpful to actually have a vocal dialogue about it and talk to yourself, like role play, right? Role play you
Mhm.
and person B, person A and person B, and help yourself with that if you find that you don't have anyone available to talk you through things at that
Mhm.
moment.
Yeah. I'd like to know what is your experience with therapy so far and what have you learned?
Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm just going to talk about like there's so much. All right, but I will condense it. So I'm just going to talk about this therapist I've been seeing recently. She's so amazing. It's excellent. I love her. Also, she's going to be watching this or listening to this. So shout out to
That's
my
amazing.
therapist. Thank you for tuning
Hello.
in. Yes, but she's so amazing. And you know what really feels good about her? It's like it's a great confidence boost, a self confidence boost, because she told me during our very first session, Sarah, I tell it how it is. Okay.
Mhm.
Um, and, that doesn't work for everyone, that style of therapy. But I just want to let you know that I tell it how it is. And, while like as we progress through our sessions, you can see if that works for you, or if not, then you might want to consider, looking for another option or a different therapist. And that's valid, right? Because every therapist has their own style of doing things. Okay. So I was like, okay, she tells it how it is. Be prepared, right? Because, um, you know, people with social anxiety, and also people without social anxiety, they can be very hard on themselves, right? You can be very self-critical. Like you were just saying that, you're so much nicer to your friends sometimes than you are to yourself. That's something that's very common, right? So I was like, okay, be prepared for her to tell you how it is because I'm sure you make a lot of mistakes, I was thinking, right? But since having her, she is so supportive and she doesn't make me feel bad at all. And she has made me realize all of these wonderful things that I've been doing and implementing without giving myself any credit for it, even. But she gives me credit for it because she tells it how it is.
That's
And
great.
it's so nice because, sometimes I can be self critical and I don't give myself credit where it's due, or I overlook
Mhm.
things, or I only focus on the bad things that I've
Yeah.
done, right? And get
Yes.
down on myself. But she's like, first of all, sometimes she's like, this thing that you feel so bad about, you're human. I don't think it's that bad.
Yeah.
And second of all, what about all this other stuff you did? You're so amazing. It just feels so nice. So I love her so much. And the other thing is that I just find that we click. I really like her style of therapy. And see, it can sometimes be a hit and miss when finding a therapist that you really click with. Um, I've noticed that as I've looked more into therapy, my therapists have been getting better. Maybe it's because I'm understanding myself better and my needs better and what I want in a therapist, right? Um, my therapist before this current one I have, she was nice. She was great. Um, this one, I will be honest, I do prefer her.
Mhm.
There's just something, I don't know, I just click with her. I
Mhm.
think I just feel safer with her.
That's
Not that the other therapist made me feel unsafe, but I just vibe with this one more. Okay. So, yeah, she has taught me so much, but one of the number one things that she's taught me is finding my own voice and being my own therapist. Okay. So, what I mean by finding my own voice is sometimes people with social anxiety, they find it very nerve wracking to speak up for themselves and ask for the things that they want. Even if it's something simple, right? Like you had mentioned when you were a child, it was difficult for you to place an order,
yeah.
right? At a restaurant. It's not something that an outsider might see as difficult. You're just, placing an order, asking for what you want. But
Mhm.
it was difficult for you to do because of that anxiety. And so my therapist has really helped me to start to find my own voice. I have a very simple example that others may see as, it's not a big deal, but to me, it was a big win. We've been working from home, because surprise, it's a pandemic. No, no surprise. It's been happening since 2020, right?
Yeah.
So, like, yeah. So we've been working from home and we just started working, like, doing actual, like, work from home recently. And so, management was like, okay, tell us what items you're going to bring from the office to your house. And I'm sitting there thinking, I can't bring my monitor from the office to my house and then bring it back the next day. and bring it back and forth, right? Like that's not efficient. And then some others were like, oh, we have two monitors, so I'm gonna have one at work and I'm gonna take one home. And I was like, yeah, that's an idea, but I like both monitors. Like I like working on both for the work I do. It's very beneficial to have two screens, right? So I was like, okay, you got to go ask for some equipment, right? To take home, like permanently until this work from home situation is over. So in the past, I might have felt, oh, I don't know if I want to ask that. I feel like I'd be asking for too much. Oh, I feel like a burden on the department. Oh, how dare I ask for something more, like something like that,
Oh, I feel that.
Yeah. And
I was
then
like,
I
am
was
I
like,
asking for too
no.
much?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then I was like, no, you know what? It's not too much. It's just a question. If they say no, it's no. But if they say yes, well, then I just
Yay.
won, right? I get my
Yeah.
monitors, I get my equipment, I get my keyboard. So I'm going to ask. So I asked my management, and they came back and they were like, I just want to be clear. Are you asking me for two separate monitors? And past me might have been like, oh my God, I'm going to add additional meaning to this sentence and feel that this person is offended that I am asking them for two additional
Mm.
monitors. But I was like, no, you know what? I am asking for it. And there's nothing wrong with that. So I was like, yes, I
Yeah.
am asking for two additional monitors. Also, I was wondering if I could have an extra keyboard and also an extra mouse and a docking
Yeah.
station.
Yeah, you
Okay.
need this. You're working from
Yeah.
home. You're working hard.
Yeah. And then she got back to me and she was like, yeah, we're going to deliver it to you. And I was like, that
Great.
was great. Like 2 years ago, I might not have been able to ask for this. And it might seem like something so simple to others. But for me, it was like a big thing. And that, okay, something amazing happened after. Okay, I can tell you what happened. So there's this coworker I have at work, and this is my perception of her. She's always so outgoing and friendly and social. And like, yeah, that's just how she is. I see her as an extrovert. That's my perception of her. Okay.
Hmm.
And so she was talking to me and she's like, oh, yeah, I wish I had like a keyboard at home. Like, I might buy one. I was like, girl, don't buy one. I was like, ask for one. See if they give it to you. And she's like, oh, I don't want to be a burden. And I was like, this sounds very familiar to me. I know what your thought process is. So I was like, girl, I asked for two monitors. I asked for a whole keyboard. I asked for a mouse. I asked for a docking station. I asked for everything. And they said they're going to deliver it to me. Just go ask. If they say no, then it's a no. But if they say yes, then you don't have to buy yourself a keyboard.
Yeah.
Who wants to buy a keyboard? You're doing work for the department. You should be able to at least ask for
Exactly.
the equipment that you need, right? So
Exactly.
she was like, okay, but I'm shy. And I was like, thinking to myself, girl, if you're shy, then what am I? Because like you do not come off as shy to me, right? And it was just so eye-opening because here's this person who I see as so bubbly and social and outgoing, but she tells me she's shy and she is worried to ask because she feels like she would be a burden by asking. She feels like she would be
Hmm.
asking for too much. And I was like, that is like mind blowing because I see you in a totally different way. And if someone had told me, oh, so and so is too, she's feeling nervous to ask for this, I would be like, you must be talking about someone else because that doesn't fit so and so's description at all. But just
Hmm.
goes to show like you can't always see what's really there, right?
Yeah.
The perception of someone is not always how things are. So, anyways, she asked for it, she got her stuff. That's great. And it was just so nice that I was able to support someone like that. Whereas before, I probably wouldn't have been able to even ask for the equipment myself. And she was
Hmm.
talking to me later, and she was like, sometimes I just feel like such a burden. And I was like, girl, I understand. I have social anxiety. I feel like a burden for like the smallest things. People might think it's the smallest thing, but it's normal for me because, I have social anxiety. And again, I was able to just state what I have without feeling any kind of embarrassment about it or fear. And she was like, that's interesting. Maybe I have social anxiety. I was like, maybe you do, maybe you don't. And then I was like, here's a link if you want to read more about it. And then, yeah, that was that. And it was a really great interaction and experience. And I was so happy that I was able to be, someone else's encouragement. And what's also really nice, and I love my therapist. She makes me feel so good. She
Oh.
told me, she told me that she feels like I'm an advocate for justice, like within the spaces that I inhabit, whether it's like a
Yeah.
workplace or like home or whatever. And that just makes me feel so good because I would have never seen myself as that ever. But
Hmm.
now that she said it, it causes me to reflect and be like, you know what? I agree with her. Like, I think I am. And there's nothing wrong. It's not like, um, it's not like gloating or anything to admit
Right.
that and to recognize that. It's important to recognize your strengths and your skills. And yeah, it was such a nice experience. Yeah.
Wow,
So,
I love the story.
yes,
I love
yes.
it because like I definitely, feel that way before too, but I also now I'm like doing more of the, asking for what I want,
Hmm.
practicing that and be like, if they say no, then it's okay. Like at least I asked for it, right?
Yeah,
Um, yeah.
exactly. And one more thing that she has taught me, which I really think is important, is she's teaching me, or she's emphasizing the point of becoming my own therapist, right?
Mm,
Because if we look at therapy, I would say most people would agree that the goal of going to therapy is to get to a point where you no longer need therapy, right? To be
mhm.
able to support yourself and be your own therapist. And she, through the work that I've been doing with her, she has told me that she feels like I'm getting closer and closer. And I can feel it too. I feel the shift. I feel that I am able to talk myself through things more so than I was able to before I started therapy with her. And it's been a really nice feeling because it builds self-confidence and self-trust. So yes, there's that.
Wow, I would like to meet your therapist.
She's so amazing. Like, oh my
No,
God.
I'm really glad that you're having a good experience with that and you see improvements and I can see it in you. Um, like I don't see you that often nowadays. Well, of course,
Well,
because
it's
we're in the
pandemic,
pandemic
but yeah.
too,
Hmm.
but like I can see that growth. So I'm really
Hmm.
happy.
Thank you.
Yeah, I actually also have a really long answer to this experience with therapy. Um,
Go for it.
and I feel like, yeah, it has been very helpful for me. I know that talking to other people, therapy may not be as helpful for them. And I do feel like maybe not everyone needs it, although I would recommend it. I think that it does make a difference when you do find the right fit.
Hmm.
Yeah,
For
because
sure.
maybe when they worked with the therapist before, it wasn't as helpful because it wasn't the right fit with the therapist that they worked with. And I have worked with many therapists and tried different programs. I would say I work with more than five actually. And
Okay.
when I started with therapy, I realized that there is so much healing and self work that I need to do, and that goes way back to childhood too.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I am continuing to work through a lot of childhood wounds and traumas. And honestly, I do cry a lot in my sessions. Sometimes I just get talk about something and I get triggered, and then I just like bawl my eyes out. And that is totally normal. It will happen. Like sometimes it may happen, like when you're being vulnerable, when you're opening up about something that you didn't even know bothered you before or bothered you that much, and it could be something that happened recently, it could be something that happened like 10 years ago.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
yeah, I would say that if you are considering therapy and because when I started because of the employee assistance program. And I
Hmm.
would say if you have that, take advantage of it. You can try it. I also have tried BetterHelp too. So BetterHelp is an international virtual platform, online platform that you can have access to therapists and you can have video chats with them, messaging and phone calls. And messaging, you can message them pretty much 24/7. Like they would take maybe a couple of days to respond or one day to respond, but then you can message whatever, whenever. I do want to say that I'm not sponsored by BetterHelp. No, unfortunately, I'm not.
Are you sure too?
I'm not sponsored by anybody, but I do want to say that this is me sharing my experience with
Hmm.
that program and BetterHelp and also another company. I do want to say like don't expect your therapist to solve your problems or tell you what to do. A lot of times they may listen and ask you really deep questions, give advice and homework too. I do find that a lot of several therapists I worked with, their advice didn't really resonate with me.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And there were times I felt that maybe it could be their advice was a bit more biased or I felt judged. And that's when I knew that, well, I don't think this therapist is a good fit for me because of that. And I don't think that we're a good fit for each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my last therapist that I worked with, which was this year, actually, I felt like in our initial session, I already felt like we clicked. So I
Mm-hmm.
felt like there was the vibe, and it's really important that you feel comfortable and vulnerable enough to open up about things that really bother you with the therapist.
Exactly. Yeah, things that bother you, things that make you feel embarrassed, or even if there's
Exactly.
shame tied to that memory. That's why it's important. So important to find someone who's a good fit and someone who you trust.
Exactly. They should be non-judgmental or critical, and listen to you and validate your emotions, and ask the right questions so that you are able to learn. Yeah, so and I definitely felt like with therapy, I have been more self-aware. I learned a lot more about myself and different coping mechanisms. As we mentioned before about cognitive behavioral therapy, that was the treatment approach that I had, and it helped me focus. It basically helps because it focuses on identifying negative and distorted thought patterns. And I learned a lot from one therapist where basically I learned about like different distorted thought patterns that I had, and there were like I think 10 of them. There were so many
Mm-hmm.
of them.
I'm gonna send sorry to interrupt
Yeah.
just really briefly. I'm gonna send an email about that at work
Oh,
next week for my thing. Yeah, we're gonna talk about the different thought patterns. But
yeah.
anyways, yes, go ahead. Continue,
Yeah,
please.
yeah, there were so many, and I wasn't aware of them. But then I was able to be like, oh, yeah, this, this, and
Mm-hmm.
this. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like this is the pattern. Like there was like different ones, like overgeneralization, where like one bad experience can form a really negative belief or conclusion. Personalization, when you take things personally, I do that sometimes. I am aware of that. Magnification, so blowing things out of proportion. There's so many of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't even know about these, or maybe I kind of knew of them back in school a long time ago. But to be able to identify these thoughts and flip them so that they're more positive or actionable, it really helped a lot. And I like it when they give me homework. I think that sometimes they might not, but then you can discuss with your therapist and be like, "Oh, can you give me homework? I want to have
Mm-hmm.
things to work with, like whether it's like worksheet or a book to read during
Yeah.
the time in between your next session." And I felt like so one therapist I worked with, her approach was effective in that her approach was more like tough love, I would say.
Mm.
And what was good about her was that we discussed goals and she held me accountable.
Okay.
And but the therapist I felt like I most connected with, she was more compassionate with me, and
Yes.
yeah, so I did
Mm-hmm.
prefer her more because she was more compassionate. She was non-judgmental. I'm able to really open up and talk to her about different things that bothered me. And I remember I had this one situation that was really difficult for me because I was really upset from that situation. And I
Mm-hmm.
made like 3 notes of reflection my reflection,
Mm-hmm.
and I shared it all with her, like all my thoughts, deep dark thoughts. Okay, but not like
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
dark, but like
No,
it was
I
like
understand. Like
sharing.
personal thoughts.
Yeah, and I was
Mm-hmm.
sharing. Okay, this is actually what goes through my head, and then she was, she was great. She listened, and she also understood where I was coming from with these thoughts. And she wasn't judgmental or anything at all, and that's like I'm really happy that I got to work with her. But I also sought her out because she is a psychotherapist and also a life coach. So I was like, oh,
Okay, so
that's
she's
that's cool
both.
that she is like licensed professional with um, different expertise under her belt.
Yeah, that's a
Um,
really cool combination.
yeah, it's interesting. So, and I think that there are certain things that they do say that really sticks to mind for me, like little reminders. This year I took 2 weeks of vacation off, right? I just
Mm-hmm.
had like staycation. Last year, for some crazy reason, I did not take any vacation.
At all? Nothing?
No, like maybe like
Oh,
one
wow.
day. I know, right? I
Okay,
didn't take
yeah,
any
that
because
doesn't count.
I mean, yeah, because I was like saving it for when I get to go on vacation again, right?
Yeah, when you can travel and
Yeah,
stuff.
who knows when that will be. But so I did take 2 weeks off. Actually, originally I was gonna take 1 week, but then my therapist was like, "Why don't you take more time off?" And I'm like, "Okay, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, why not? Like, what am I saving it for? Like, I need to use it. I should use it now. Like, now is time." And also, I was feeling really burnt out from work and everything. And then I still saw my therapist during the 2 weeks though, like the one session,
Mhm.
and I was telling her like how upset I was or disappointed I was at myself for not doing enough. Like I had this whole long to-do list, and then she was telling me to
Oh.
listen to your body. She was like, listen to your body, Tina. You really needed that time to rest, right? And then she told me that, and I think I was talking to you as well, like a couple of days later, and you were like also telling me the same thing. I'm like, okay, all right, I'll listen to myself. Um,
Yeah.
but then there are like little things like that. She would also tell me like remind me things like to not be so hard on myself, and there are certain things out of my control that I cannot do anything about. And one other thing that I really found helpful is sometimes I do base my decisions on my emotions, right? But then I had a couple of therapists remind me that, like, okay, this is what you feel, but what are the facts? And I'm like, okay, you're right, because sometimes I might um, make up stories in my head, or like, my thoughts don't serve me. But
Mhm.
what is the reality here? Like, what is actually happening? And I have to like separate that. So that's
Yeah.
my experience.
I just do have one question for you. I just want to
Yeah.
clarify. When you said you make up stories in your head, are you saying that you make assumptions?
Yeah, I think like assumptions based on like maybe something someone said, or again personalizing it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Jumping to conclusions
turning
or
into
worst case
conclusions and stuff.
scenario
Yeah, and
assumptions.
that's why I'm like
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
these like different thought patterns. And I'm like, oh, I can relate to a lot of them. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's really common. I mean, I think that's
Mhm.
like one of the most common things I
Mhm.
see or people with social anxiety tell me about, and also that I experience. But I just want to say about the thing you were saying of, then sometimes you'll have these really emotional sessions and sometimes you'll cry. I
Mhm.
think that's really healing, right? Because
Yeah.
yeah, there's especially this doesn't apply to everyone, of course, but especially if you have experienced trauma or end up doing trauma work, because
Mhm.
like what qualifies as trauma? What's counted as trauma, right? When people think trauma, they may think, oh, violence, assault, abuse,
Mhm.
that's trauma, right?
Right.
But I think trauma is a much wider umbrella than just those
It
things.
is.
Maybe something happened 10 years ago. And it had nothing to do with violence or assault or something like that, but it affects you and you can't forget about it, right? And it still
Yeah.
bothers you.
Yeah.
That it can be emotional to discuss. And when you feel like you talk about it to someone who understands, who accepts it, who does not judge you harshly for it, it's normal to get emotional because you feel like you just have relieved yourself a little bit of a
Mhm.
burden that you may have had, right? So
Yeah.
that's totally normal. And definitely getting emotional during therapy doesn't happen all the time, but it's totally normal when it
Yeah.
happens. And I think it's very healing.
It
Hmm.
is healing. It is healing to like, let it out, so, to tell someone something that's so vulnerable, but to trust them and for them to respond in a respectful, understanding way. Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So, what advice would you give to someone who is seeking professional help?
Okay. So, four things that I would say. Okay.
Hmm.
First, it's very, very helpful if you know what mental health issue you have or if you have a mental health issue. Okay. I didn't know I had social anxiety until a few years ago. And if I had known, then it would have changed my world because I would have gotten treatment sooner. Right.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I like it's natural that if I started treatment sooner, I would have progressed more by now because there would have been more time that I had been getting treatment for. And also, when I was young, I didn't know I had social anxiety, of course, because I just said that I figured it out a few years ago. I thought I
Mhm.
was very shy. Everyone around me thought I was very shy. I was enrolled in this class, and it was called Stand Up and Speak. Okay,
Oh,
and it taught you how to like stand up
whoa.
and speak, like give presentations and class settings and stuff, right? And I was like 10 or something, I don't know. And it was helpful, like in terms of giving presentations in class, but it didn't solve the problem. And the reason why it didn't solve the problem is because giving presentations is not my problem. Social anxiety was my problem, and I didn't know that that was my problem or what that was, right? So it's definitely beneficial to know what your mental health issue is if you have one. That's the first thing, trying to
Mhm.
identify it. How can you do that? If you have been feeling down or been feeling off, talk to your doctor. You can, just explain what you've been going through. There's a lot of information online these days. That being said, I would be careful about self-diagnosing, just because, we're not therapists and we're not professionals, and there, with all the information that's out there, it can be tricky. So, maybe going to a health professional would be best to get diagnosed, right? And figure out, okay,
Mhm.
what exactly is it that I have or that I'm experiencing? That's the first thing. Um, Second thing is to know what treatment options are available. Like you and I, we've talked a lot about CBT, right?
Yeah.
But in my personal experience, CBT did help me as an initial thing.
Uh-huh.
I found that after a certain point, it gave me all that it could give. Like I could not get anything more
Right.
from it at a certain point, and I needed something more. And
That's
so
true.
my therapist now, I don't know what she uses. I think she told me, I forgot. I don't know. But whatever she does, it still does incorporate some CBT, but she uses other methods as well. And this has really been helping me. So to know what treatment options are available, maybe you want to start with CBT, and once you get everything you can from it, maybe you want to try incorporating an additional element of treatment if that's right for you, right?
Mhm.
Also knowing what actual programs are available to you, right? Like, do you work? If so, do you have coverage? If you have coverage, can you afford therapy? Is it worth it for you, like out of pocket therapy sessions? If you can't afford it or if you don't feel it's worth it for you, what are the free programs that are available to you in your city or in your province, right? Knowing your treatment options is obviously helpful, right? Because you'll know a list of things that you can look into. The third thing is that, okay, so it's important to understand that the process of therapy takes work on your part and can be difficult, right? It's not a magic pill, because you have to do the work and be vulnerable and sit in the discomfort. I remember you just said, Tina, like not too long
Mhm.
ago, that don't expect your therapist to be able to solve your problems for you,
Mhm.
because they can teach you methods to use to help yourself. They can talk you through things, but if you want to really, improve, you have to do the work. And that can be difficult sometimes depending on, you know, what mental health issue you have, the severity of it, if you have trauma, a ton of other things, right? What's going on in your life right now. So just to be mindful that it is meant to help, but it takes work. And sometimes that work can be difficult. In my experience, that work has been rewarding. And
Mhm.
I definitely, if I had to go back, I would definitely do it again because it's really helped me. But I do know people that are hesitant to do therapy because they're scared of, the memories it will bring up and the triggers and the pain and the work. And that's valid. I don't think anyone should be forced
Mhm.
to get treatment, because
Yeah.
if they're being forced, they're not going to be able to accept it. And if they can't accept the treatment and really take it in, they're not going to get better because they're not in a place to be willing to do that yet or be capable of doing that yet, right? So
Mhm.
just realizing that therapy does take work and just, mentally preparing yourself for that. And the fourth thing I would say is I think it really helps to try to make sure that you have a support system in place before you start therapy. Sometimes therapy can be draining, especially if you go back into like past events that really trigger you. And you may find after a therapy session, you might just need to talk to someone else, right? Like a family member, just to let it out, right? If it was
Mm-hmm.
a difficult session, not difficult in that the therapist made you feel bad or like you don't like your therapist, but difficult
Yeah.
in the sense that they brought up a lot of things that you haven't come to terms with yet, or you're still trying to heal from, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I think if possible, um, if you can have a support system in place, whether it's a family member, a friend, or someone, that I think that would be really beneficial. So yeah, those are
Yeah.
my advice and tips.
Great. Yeah. Like in terms of what type of therapy, there is a lot of resources out there, and look into your budget. There are free therapy programs. There's also like others that might be more affordable. You can have one-on-one or group therapy, and maybe you want to find a therapist that is more specialized in what you're dealing with right now too. And when you do go and work with a therapist, there's a lot of things that you want to discuss with them. So you want to talk about what your goals are, what do you want to work on, um, and ask them like what do they specialize in. Maybe you want someone who has similar experiences or has a specialty in that situation that or area in your life that you want to work on. Ask them what their approach is, and how are they going to work with you. How can you track your progress and figure out if your personalities work well together.
Mm-hmm.
I would say when you go into your sessions, try to be prepared. I think that like it helps when I go in and I write down questions that I have, things I want to talk about, things I want to work on, and just share what I have in mind. It does help as to maximize the time that you have with your therapist. And it's okay to cry and vent or not really know what to talk about too. Sometimes I think like hopefully your therapist will be able to ask you the right questions and guide you in those sessions too. Remember, this is your space and time to work on yourself, to be yourself, and yeah, like just to be vulnerable. And also, I do want to say when it comes to therapy, healing, and self work, it is an ongoing process. It is not a linear process. It can be really messy, and sometimes you may not feel like you are making progress. Maybe you're like, oh man, I get triggered from time to time, but that is actually normal. But know that like you are making progress, and you might not be able to see it. But then I think sometimes if you're aware of the spot that comes up, or like you're able to pull yourself out of that thought or that situation a lot quicker, that is progress. And just like a reminder that this whole process is a journey. It's is no place to really arrive at. There's no destination. That you can of course get better with time and with these strategies and tools that you learned, and you will. But don't be so hard on yourself if the progress is too slow for your own expectation, or you feel like you're not really making progress.
Yeah, for sure. I really like what you just said about it being more of a journey as opposed to just
Mm-hmm.
focusing on the destination.
Yeah.
Because, it does take time. And just like it's like similar to how we constantly learn throughout life, right? We can constantly improve and,
Mm-hmm.
heal ourselves and get closer to the place that we want to be one day. Also, I just want to point out when you were talking about, like, basically get to know your therapist, find out their strengths, and talk about your goals. There are some therapists who do offer free consultations, not very long, maybe like 10 to 15 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
but it's still within that phone call, you can get at least a little bit of a sense. So that is something that you might be able to find with certain therapists that they might offer you
Yeah.
free
Yeah, that's great.
consultation. Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you know of any mental health resources for those who want to take better care of their mental health?
Yes, I do. The first one is the one that you already talked about, which is EAP, the Employee Assistance Program. So I am a government worker, and I know that EAP is offered if you work for the federal government. Um, I am not sure if it's offered for places outside of the federal government, but I
I
think
think
maybe. Do you know?
there are some companies, or it might be like another program, but I think
Okay.
some companies do have them.
Okay. So basically, what it is if you're not sure, if you do work and you're not sure if your company offers it, I would definitely suggest looking into that if you're interested. They offer you, I think it's like 6 to 8 personal sessions with a mental health service provider. So what does that mean? You could be matched with maybe a social worker or like a counselor or a therapist. It depends, but I believe you do get to have like a. Remind me if I'm wrong, Tina, or correct me if
Hmm.
I'm wrong, because I'm not. I don't remember. I did EAP so long ago. Um,
Okay.
I think the first session is kind of like a trial. I don't know. I
Yeah,
can't
it's
remember
more
a
like
hundred
they want
percent.
to know your background, like why you're seeking therapy, and like more like
Mm-hmm.
what therapy is about, and like
Yeah.
confidentiality. Yeah.
Yes, and if you find that the person you're matched with is not the best fit for you, like off the bat, if you feel that, you can always request a different match. Okay. Oh, by the way, when I'm talking about these mental health resources, I'm going to rate them in order of helpfulness. Okay. And at the end, I will list the most helpful. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So, yes. So the first one for me personally is
Wow.
EAP.
No, that's great. I like
Okay.
that you have a rating. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's important because
Oh,
like everyone
good.
has a different experience, but I'm just sharing my own.
Yes, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, so EAP, yes, there's that. It's good in the sense that you do get one-on-one sessions with someone, right? You get to air out whatever it is that's on your mind. So that's good. The second resource that I have, it's called Bounce Back. It's a program. I believe it's offered from the CMHA, Canadian Mental Health Association, and it is, I also believe it's available for people who are 15 plus, and I think their main focuses are anxiety and depression
Mm.
related mental health issues. And what it is once you have your initial consultation appointment with the person. Oh, by the way, this is an over the phone thing. At least when I did it, it was over the phone. It wasn't
Mm,
like a face to
okay.
face in person session. When you have your consultation, they kind of figure out, what the mental health issue is that you're dealing with, whether it's anxiety related, depression related. And what it is I think it lasts for 12-ish weeks, so about 3 months. And once a week, you have a phone appointment with your mental health person, right? I don't think they're actually counselors. I'm not sure. You would have to look on the Bounce Back website to actually see what their certification is and like in terms of who you're matched with. But they send you a set of workbooks. And the good thing is you get to choose which workbook you want. And I actually still have my workbooks. So it could be a variety of topics related to your mental health issue, and you select the workbooks and they mail them to you, or they can send you a PDF version if you prefer, and you work through them throughout the week. Okay. And then during your phone call, you get to discuss any things that you did not understand in the workbook or any things that you wanted more clarity on, like any concepts. Okay. So the
Okay.
big difference with Bounce Back is that it is not a place for you to talk about your personal struggles or experiences. It
Mm-hmm.
is a place for you to discuss coping mechanisms. Okay. So if one coping mechanism is like, oh, I can't even think of any right now off the top of my head. Let's just say self-talk, right? To
Mm-hmm.
kind of talk yourself through something. If you don't understand how to do that, or if you have questions about that, you can ask the person that you're matched with on the phone more about that and how that works. But it's not a program in which you can say, oh, today I had a bad day and this is what happened. That's not what it is. Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to put it out there so people understand what it is really. So that was my second resource. The third resource I have, it was called IASP, Increased Access to Structured Psychotherapy, but I think they changed the name since then to OSP, which is the Ontario Structured Psychotherapy Program. Okay. And that is with CAMH, which I believe stands for the Center for Addiction and Mental Health.
Mm-hmm.
So through that program, it focuses on anxiety and depression for sure, I know. I think they might also offer OCD, so obsessive compulsive disorder, and PTSD help. I'm not 100% sure. You would have to look into that on their website. For
Okay.
this, you do need a referral from your doctor. I think you actually might need a referral for the bounce back program too. And this is lasts for about 3 months on a weekly basis, just like the bounce back program. But the big difference here is that you can talk about your personal experiences. It's not like bounce back in the sense where you only focus on the coping mechanisms. It's more about, like you can get personal here, basically, is what I'm saying. And it is face to face. I did mine virtually, which was great because I didn't have to go anywhere. I could just go home and do it.
Mm-hmm.
And you do get matched with a psychotherapist, okay? And I found that helpful. You are matched with a psychotherapist for 3 months. The good thing about this is that they give you one workbook. It's a fat workbook. It's not that fat, actually. It's just fatter than the ones that you get from Bounce Back. And it is tailored to your mental health issues. So for me, I got a social anxiety one, right? And there are different types of anxiety. Maybe you would get a generalized anxiety one, something like that, depending on what you have or what you experience. And you go through that workbook with your psychotherapist, but you also can talk about your personal life, which I really like. Bounce Back was helpful. However, I was really missing that component of talking about my life. And I really
Yeah.
needed to talk about my life and my experiences. And I found that that's what Bounce Back was lacking for me. That's why I liked, now it's called OSP, so the Ontario Structured Psychotherapy Program. Yeah, so that was good. And after 3 months, your therapist says, okay, now go and spread your wings and fly. See how you do out there without me, right? And yeah, I did that. I do wish I could have stayed with her longer. Now, she did tell me, though, we recommend that you try to, just live life without without the program for, I think they said 3 months. I think. And if you find that you're still struggling or you need extra help or you want to revisit the program, you can always come back. I think you might have to get another referral from your family doctor. Not sure about that, but you can always come back. I felt like I needed more support, but I didn't go back because I felt that I had kind of gained everything that I could from there. I could have been wrong, but that was just my personal feeling. Um, so then, that was that program. And then the last thing is good old fashioned out of pocket therapy that you pay for
Yeah.
yourself. Okay. So the above three resources I mentioned, EAP, Bounce Back, and OSP, they are free. Like you're covered for them. However, of course, out of pocket therapy, you have to pay. That being said, depending on where you work, you could get coverage, whether it's partial or full, that depends on where you work. But I personally have felt that this is the best fit for me because I get to choose exactly who I want because I'm paying for it, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
for the OSP program, I could have said, oh, like, I want someone else. But it's hard because you can't review people's like bios and stuff or their
True.
profiles beforehand. If you don't feel like someone's a good fit, then you ask for a change, but you can't say, oh, I want this person, right? You have to say,
Mm-hmm.
I want to change, and then they put you with someone, and then maybe you don't like that person, right?
Yeah.
So I like this because I can choose who I want to choose. Like I can book with whoever I want to book. um, and so that's how I found my current therapist, who is amazing and who I love. And for me, I understand that money might be a concern, right? Because it is a financial investment,
Yeah.
it's an investment in yourself. But think about everything else you invest in, right? Think about everything else you spend money on and ask yourself, is my mental health worth it? Do I feel like the benefits I could possibly receive from therapy? Do I feel like it would be worth spending money on? Right? And just that's an answer that that's a question that only you would know the answer to. But that is something that I would urge you to ask yourself. But yeah, those are my mental health resources, and I did rate them. The last one was the highest rating.
Yeah.
So yeah, there you go.
No, this is great. Like I remember I was talking to you about this before, and you shared me with me those resources. I'm like, wow, there's a lot,
Hmm.
and I'm really glad that you shared with me those resources. And also, again, from what you just said about therapy being an investment, but then when you think about it, say if you hire a personal trainer for your physical health, what about your mental health?
Yeah.
You can work with a therapist. It's just a
Hmm.
matter of what you think is important to you. Um, but yeah, you had all the good resources, so I'm just going to add on a couple. Um, I don't really have a rating. Well, I mean,
That's okay.
yeah, so I think I had a couple of sessions with different therapists with EAP.
Hmm.
And although it is great to have that one-on-one hour session, again, like what you said, uh, they just assign you a therapist and it might not be the best fit. Something to keep in mind, like you don't get to choose, you don't really get to read bios. I remember before when I was meeting with my therapist in person, they asked me, oh, is there an area that's closer to where you live that where you can meet with the therapist face to face. But then it's also what they have available, right? So just something to keep in mind. And then I would also say there is Mind Beacon. Right now, it is free. However, I
Hmm.
would say that it's similar to Bounce Back in that it is a program where you do for a couple of months. So it's kind of like a course. They have readings for you. So I remember
Hmm.
reading articles about stress. They give you a lot of readings. You get assigned to a therapist, but then you don't talk about your personal life. It is more
Yeah.
similar to Bounce Back, where you just talk about what you read, the work that you
Hmm.
did, and then coping mechanisms, the concept, that type of thing. Which so I didn't really like that much because
Hmm.
although I felt the readings were helpful in explaining different things and different concepts, I felt like I wanted to have that one-on-one conversation and talk about my personal life and what I can like what I can do. Yeah, there are so many different organizations out there. A lot of times you might need a physician's referral or it's all HIP covered, but again with better help. Um, it can be a hit and miss, I would say, with that
Hmm.
because there are so many licensed professionals on that platform, like counselors, psychotherapists, other professionals, and they do have bio, and you do have the option of selecting um, like their specialties and like what you want to work on, and as well as what type of interaction. So, like live chat, video call, it is more
Hmm.
affordable, a little bit more affordable than actual in person therapy. Um, and you're able to message your therapist every day. That is a good thing about it. And another good thing about it is that you're able to switch the counselor if it's not the right fit. So I have done that before.
Hmm.
Um, but again, I would say although it is good, pros and cons. I do prefer the in-person, out-of-your-pocket therapist. But I do want to say if anyone wants to try BetterHelp, if you register with Worth Pat's Foundation, which I will link below in this episode below, you do get to try it for 1 month free trial. Again, not sponsored. Just so you know. And yeah, there are also something to say is that this is not a substitute for therapy, but I'm going to mention it. There are podcasts and social media, books that you can read. And I do follow a couple of therapists on social media. I'm just going to mention them quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to Spirits is a therapist that I just randomly found. And she has like free advice Fridays where she goes on live and she posts them too. And I really like to tune in a couple of times. Like I would say like she is a good example of a good therapist because she like people would ask like a really simple question that could be really common for a lot of people too, like something like, oh, I have trouble making decisions, and then she would
Mm-hmm.
give really good advice. She explain, oh, like, oh, why you're not making that great decisions or as quickly, and then she'll give advice, actionable things that you can do. So I would say she's someone good to follow. There's also Dr. Rebecca Ray. She has books and podcasts, and then there's Millennial Therapist, and I just like to read her Instagram posts. But there's so many more. Like I feel like I keep following more and more. Sometimes you just like find stuff that is good to like quickly read over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. That's really great sources, and I can tell you about the Instagram therapist that I learned the but versus and, or the and versus
Yeah.
but thing about.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Her account is, it's called Therapy for Women. Now, if you're not a woman, of
Oh,
course you can still
I think I
follow.
followed her too.
Oh, it's Amanda
Recently.
E. White. Yeah, Amanda
Oh,
E.
okay.
White is her name, but her account is Therapy for Women,
Oh,
and it's on Instagram. And yeah, she's funny, but she also has. I've learned a few things from her posts.
yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. So, um, all the resources that we mentioned, I will link them below in our episode. We talk about a
yay.
lot. Okay, so that was a really, really great discussion with you, Sarah.
Yeah, it
Oh my
was.
gosh.
Thank you.
I do have some final conclusions and things that I want to say.
Yes.
I
Yes.
do want to say that you don't need to see a therapist for a serious mental health issue or diagnosed with depression or generalized anxiety. You can be like a functional adult dealing with everyday problems and just going through something in your life, like a transition in your life, and you feel like you need some guidance, and you can seek therapy. It doesn't have to be a serious problem. Um,
That's a really important point for sure.
yes, because I know people seek therapy for different reasons. It could be like they want to improve their communication skills. They just want to work on themselves and learn more about
Yeah,
themselves. It doesn't have to be like something big, right? Hmm.
exactly.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I do also want to say that be compassionate with yourself as you are going through this healing process and doing the work because it is messy and it will be uncomfortable and yeah, it won't be easy. You will be vulnerable and you really have to dig deep and maybe in your past and things that really did hurt you in the past. So it is a journey again. Also, like you are not alone. Whatever you are dealing with, take care of your mental health and feel free to message me or Sarah for more information. Sarah gave so much good information. Like you can reach out to her, check out our resources that we mentioned, and yeah, message us if you want to learn more about our experiences. And thank you, Sarah, for joining today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I was so excited and I was nervous at the same time, but I'm
You did
so
great.
glad I joined you and it was great. And I also just wanted to say, yeah, in terms of any final words that I have for everyone, like Tina said, just be kind to others, be kind to yourself, which, is can be easier said than done sometimes because often we are more critical with ourselves than with
Mm-hmm.
others. um, just really try to treat yourself like you would treat your best friend and just cut yourself some slack. Give yourself a break every now and then. And also, this is an aside, but I am fasting from Ramadan right now.
Oh,
So I just want to say happy Ramadan to everyone.
oh.
If anyone is fasting, take care of your mental health, take care of your physical health because physical health is connected to mental health. And, actually, my therapist mentioned that she noticed that with a lot of her clients who are fasting, she finds that while they are fasting, they tend to have more they tend to have stronger emotions. So, just to try to take care of yourself, and, be mindful of that and give yourself a break every now and then to just relax. So, yeah.
Yeah, and thank you everyone for tuning in. Sarah, where can we connect with you?
Okay, so it's hard to find me, but I will tell you guys since you were so kind enough to listen to Tina's podcast. So I, I'm on Instagram under Zero Soul Painter Zero. Okay, I do have a private account, but if you want to reach out to me, please feel free to. I will, welcome that and get back to you. Yeah, that's where you can find me.
Yeah, okay, great. Yeah, reach out to Sarah. She's great. And also, like, again, Sarah, like, I am really happy you are one of my biggest supporters for this podcast.
Yeah, of
Um,
course. It's so good. Like
oh,
I
thank
honestly
you.
love listening. I like learning more about my friends, so which I think is like normal. So I like listening to your podcast because I like to hear about your perspective and like your friends' perspectives as well.
Uh-huh, yeah, and like you're one of the few people that actually give me feedback, so I know that you tune in and I'm really glad to have that feedback. And also, like this episode was great. I feel like this is a really healing episode for me to do with
It's
you.
nice, isn't it?
I know,
It's so
there's a
good.
whole therapy session right here. But yeah, again, everyone, thank you for tuning in. Until my next episode. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye.